So welcome everyone. This session will be on digital exams and digital assessments. The first speaker is Ingrid Melve. She's the program director of the eCampus program in Norway. They have many different projects there, of course, and one of them is digital exams and digital assessments. So, Ingrid Melve.
Thank you. I'm not the one running the actual project. I'm just the program manager, so anything that is not correct, feel free to take it up with the project team afterwards. We are doing a shared solution for digital assessment in Norway. So this is not a tiny pilot project. Those have already been done. We're doing something that is millions of exams. So far there are 23 institutions involved. There are many vendors. We have so far signed one contract for a large development, letter of intent with another vendor, are actively speaking with multiple vendors in this area. So it's not a standalone single thing, and lots of what I'm going to talk about will be more about how to put it all together than the actual detailed content. But then again, you'll hear concrete experiences from Denmark and Iceland later on in the session. Today, Norwegian students have a lot of what we call school exams. You sit down and you write an essay or you answer questions and you use pen and paper. In special cases, you can be allowed to use a pencil or a drawing implement of some kind, or maybe a PC. But the basic is the pen and paper. And there are many of the school type exam. There are also home exams, oral exams, and I'll not go into detail about those today. Digital assessment and the day of the exam, what are we trying to fix? Well, as I mentioned, the project is a part of the national program for digitalizing higher education and the flexible education. So it's coordinated by Uninet. We build infrastructure and we support the interinstitutional ICT work. So anything that goes across an organizational border or an international border is something we care about. The stuff that is only on campus, we care about only to the extent that the experiences there can be duplicated in another setting. So we don't invent the same wheel over and over again. The digital examination system called DIG, which is also sort of Norwegian slang for cool. This is something the students really want. There are 8 universities participating and 15 university colleges and Uninet as the coordinators. And we aim to specify and make best practice documentation available. That's the first phase of the project. As I mentioned, we have the vendors involved, and with the collaboration between the vendors and the universities, we can make great solutions available. Our aim is to make a joint procurement in 2016, and it seems a very long time in the future. But remember, if you come in as a vendor this summer, you have one exam period this Christmas for testing small scale, then you have a large scale test next spring, and if you need to do any kind of adjustment or learn from the stuff you did in the testing and do another round, there's an exam period for Christmas 2015. So that's why the time frame is the way it is. Digital exams. Well, what does it mean to be digital? Digital digits are part of your hand. It's also the first thing the students want is the ability to use text processing when producing text. And apart from possibly some Christmas cards or postcards, they mostly write on keyboards and not with a pen and paper. It's a very unnatural way of writing, especially if you're writing a big piece of text and you don't really know how to structure it at an exam today. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the internal stuff at the institution level. And this is where it gets a bit complex. We have a high-level expert group in Norway who's looked at what is the exam, as seen from regulations and legislation around exams, what are students' rights. They've looked at the organizational aspects of exams, who is involved, who's working on it, and they've looked at the pedagogical ways of examination and assessment as such. Because having things digital makes it possible to do assessment in different ways from what you do today. And recreating old practice in a new format is not necessarily the best way of doing it. So there's a high-level expert group who's working on this. Then there are local pilots, more than 23, involved in this project. And then there's the eCampus project trying to bring together this whole thing. And what we're aiming for is the digital assessment for all students as soon as possible. So I said 2016 is a long time in the future, but it will be gradually phased in over not so many exam periods ahead. And we are ramping up quite quickly. We had in the thousands and hundreds this spring. We will have in the 10,000s for Christmas. Right? Yeah. Project goals: find technical solutions, define the needs, work with the vendors to develop these solutions, and do large-scale rollout, the live tests. Some of this stuff you can only test how it actually works in a live university with real exams going on. You don't know how your organization will handle the digital version of the workflow until you've actually done it. So it's a large-scale release early, release often, and adjust the way you work. And trying to do that within the procurement rules is challenging, but quite possible. We also want to change the school exam part of it, so that's the first goal. This is a desperate need right now. And yes, students are protesting in the street. The picture on your right-hand side is, this is one of those projects where you're thrown into deep water, so all the project participants got survival suits, and were put in a boat just to remind them on what this is all about. And oh, I forgot to mention the Norwegian national statsbudsjettet. What's that in English? The budget for the government actually says, gives us a mandate that fix this thing. Go out and make a digital examination. So it's a very clear mandate from the government to do it. And it's quite complicated, some of the stuff we're going to do. And these are some of the interfaces involved in the solution. I'm not going to go through that. I just wanted to show you the slide to illustrate the complexity of the work and the stuff we're up against in the project. And it's the first time we do a number of things. It's the first time we do digitalization and dematerialization of the exam process as such within all the institutions. We do policy alignment because one of the things we found out when we involved many institutions together is that you need to align the policy. For example, how long do you store the exams? Because the formal requirement is that they must be stored as long as it's necessary, but no longer. And the definition of necessary varies from 6 months to 2 years to 10 years to eternity. And we need to align things like that. And some of that have very practical implications when you start doing it in a digital form. And that finding that practical level involves a lot of negotiation between the project participants. Also, it's the first time we do bring your own device for critical situation. Exam is extremely time critical. You need stability, and it's not easy to get right. It turns out that somewhere between 5 and 20% of the computers the students bring are so infected with viruses that they cannot be used, even though they've been tested beforehand by the students. So there are things we need to do better, and there are procedures we probably need to do for testing beforehand. And then we need to integrate multiple components for assessment. Assessment and testing is not easy because there are so many different subjects and so many different ways of testing what a student should know. So there's a wide variety of things. And this is the first time we sort of take the helicopter view of the whole area. We're also doing this as a pre-commercial procurement. This is a specific part of the procurement process within the EU regulations. And yes, I'm going grey, and I'm blaming the EU regulations and the Norwegian interpretation of that. If you want more advice on how to use pre-commercial procurement, there's a document from the EU that gives more details about how to do this. And it allows you to do stuff without all the call for tenders for small amounts of money, but only following specific procedures. So we're a pilot in the innovative procurement program in Norwegian Business Council and Norwegian government. And that's also part of this project. We look at workflow. How does the work involved in preparing an exam, the exam day, the grading afterwards, complaints from the students, archiving, all of that come together? And what is the best way to work with this for a university employee or for the various groups of university employees who have to work together? And often the grading people are people from outside the university. So just moving it to digital process means you get the chance to review it and see how it's done and try and come up with a smarter way of doing it. And it's supported by FS, which is the shared student registry for 52 of the higher education institutions in Norway. So not all of them are in the project, but all of them are informed about what we're doing. And we have lots of different principals involved, the different groups who have different views of this workflow. And this is also the part where we are part of the GEANT project, because this is part where we get rid of the paper and it's a green IT thing. And there are tons of paper involved. I think we saw the numbers from University of Tromsø. They spent quite a lot of money just ferrying the paper around in town, not to mention the big stacks of paper involved. And we also look at the architecture, sort of the helicopter view. This is the exam systems. These are the components of the exam system. How does it play together? How does it come together? What are the best current practices around this? And as you may have noticed in some of the other presentations earlier, Uninet has an extensive set of best current practice documents. So we're adding to the set, same way, a setup for a room, microphones, wireless networks, how to do NAT. All those things are documented in best current practices. Something went weird with that slide, but I'll fix it before we put it online. And testing what kind of integrations are possible is also part of the architecture work. So the architecture is what should go together, and integration is about what goes together, how does it come together, this whole thing. Because there are different components and not all of them play well together. I mean, the thumb is different from the pointy finger and the pinky. So it's different. It has to play together, otherwise it won't make sense. We share extracts, imports and exports from different systems. How do we share them? How do we define them? Who are the candidates? Who are grading the exams? What are the grades? The grades are aligned. European credit transfer system is aligned, so there are lots of standard blocks we can build on. How do we implement transparency? How do we handle students complaining about the grades? And there are a lot of students complaining about the grades. Once you complain, you have the right to get the assessment of your exam presented to you. So if you want to learn from your exam, there are some students who complain, not to complain, but to get that specification of why did I get this grade, what did I understand, what did I not understand. And also the workflow handover to other systems, archive, student registry, etc. Is this interesting, the integration part? Okay, someone was nodding. Good, because I have details. We have a lot of systems involved. You see the systems on the right-hand side there. Exam systems, student registry, calendar and room planning. Many exams are held off campus. And trying to get power and Wi-Fi in a sensible manner into a off-campus site. I love ice hockey rinks, by the way. They have a sufficient power supply to the sports hall, and you can just remove the ice and put the students there and run your exams. You only have to add the Wi-Fi. If you have, for example, a handball court, you need to add both the power supply and the Wi-Fi. Plagiarism, did they cheat? Did they just copy the text from somewhere else? Check for that. The grading system as such. Case processing system for handling complaints. Could be integrated into this. And of course, archiving libraries and all of that. So what we've done practically is to establish an integration point using Mule that talks to the student registry and does a extract of information. This is available to all the examination systems, including the internally developed, because there are some places that have internally developed software, and some of them also use the same integration points. And we're at the process of defining APIs for exam information. We're building on previous work for that, but we need to define, and we've done test runs this spring, and hopefully it will be a stable version by Christmas or before Christmas, before the Christmas exam period. So we're in the period of extensive testing for those APIs now. And it's important that these APIs are as stable as possible. At the same time, we need to have flexibility and the ability to have new functionality. And that is a challenge. Adjusting the APIs as we gain knowledge about what is going on and how it's used is important for us. And also to harden the integration point. If I was a malicious student, which of course I would never be, but if I was, I would attack the integration point to be sure that my grades were put in the right format. The right format being an A, not a B, or a C, or whatever. I shouldn't think of getting anything less than a B, come to think of it. But it's a point that will be attacked, so there's quite a few security issues that we need to sort out around it. Also, we have the bring your own device for the students' stuff, and I purposely used the word stuff because there's so many different devices. Currently, the existing solutions mostly work on Macs and PCs. Some work is going on for iPad and other tablets. And we know that the number of tablets, whether they be iPads or Android-based, is growing quite rapidly. And some people will want and need to use them for their exams because they won't have any other devices. So that's what are the software requirements? What kind of versions of software do they need? What are the hardware requirements? The practical stuff, I mentioned the virus-infected PCs. Will they remember to bring their power supplies? Stuff like that. Exam is a very stressed out situation. Sort of the cognitive skills of people go away when you get stressed. If you don't believe me, get someone to bring a lion, and then you start up before they bring in the lion, you go like this, and you can see your thumbs. Once they bring the lion into the room, you will not be able to see your thumbs until they're about here, because you vision narrows down, and the same thing happens in an exam situation, which makes it extremely hard to predict some of the stuff the students will do. But I'm betting on them for getting power supplies. And also there are a number of security aspects, because if you're using bring your own device for digital exams, and we want the exam to be in a controlled environment, you have, as an institution, as a university or a college, to be able to control equipment owned by somebody else. This is normally what's done in a botnet. So the technology is there, but it's not always seen as a friendly gesture when someone installs it into your PC. And there may be steps taken that will prevent you from actually doing this. So we're sort of taking the whole security paradigm and turning it upside down. We actually want to invade the students' PCs and take control over their device for a limited time period, log almost everything they do, and then retreat from the PC and leave no trace of what we did to them. If anyone else but me get sort of associations to people who claim they've been adopted by aliens and brought into a UFO, yes, it's not only you, it's me as well. In order to do this, we will need to be very careful to get good specifications and to document the good practice and how this is done. This is one of the major parts of the project, is getting that good practice and the knowledge about bad practice out in all the universities and all the colleges. This will be one of the major deliverables, not only for the bring your own device, but in this case it's very easy to use as an example because it's so obvious when we're invading someone and then retreating. You need to do this in a very structured, well-documented, predefined way. Examination rooms, some are, well, this is from my alma mater, NTNU in Trondheim, the main door into the main building. Not all examination rooms are like that. Some of them are sports halls. I mentioned the ice hockey rinks. I love the ice hockey rinks. But they're spread all over town. It is a challenge to get power, Wi-Fi, and also the physical outlay of the rooms change when you do it, because when you write on a piece of paper and you bend down, it's hard to see the piece of paper from someone sitting just behind you or beside you. Whereas if you have a screen and you put it up, you can see the screen from the back of the room. And what does that mean for the way we set up the examination rooms? Also lighting, sort of normal stuff normal people need and even students need in an exam situation. There is a best current practice document in draft right now. Aim to put it in November. So that's one of the parts where we've actually gotten quite far, because the pilot projects done at various universities have provided the foundation for a shared best current practice. And it will be a first version, and then we'll revise it after having done 1 or 2 examination periods and gained more experience in what works and what does not work. I mentioned the partnership with vendors. This is important. The sound is going back and forth. Hold on, let me try again. We don't want to spend time and effort on software development. There are people who will do this in a good way and who know what they're doing and who plan to sell this to the rest of not only the Nordic area but also abroad, hopefully. And we're getting good relationship, but we're not monogamous. We're dancing with multiple vendors at this time. And we're doing testing. We're testing and we're testing. And we're doing more testing right now. So this is where we are. We're definitely into the testing game. Our next steps will be large-scale testing. I know from one of the universities. They want 15% digital for 2015, which I think they'll struggle to reach, but maybe, hopefully, and 60% for 2016. And these are millions of exams, so we're scaling from somewhere in the hundreds, low thousands today to millions. Best current practice documents, we promise to publish these also in English once they get translated, but they'll be in Norwegian in the first versions. Develop software together with the vendors, and that partnership and understanding what the needs really are is a big part of the work we're doing. Actually understanding our own requirements. development contracts, the paperwork and the procurement rules, and then, as I mentioned, the aim is a joint procurement as soon as possible. So that's it. Questions?
We have enough time for questions, yes. Any questions?
If any one of you sits on information who's useful for this, I'd love to talk to you. Be at the Uninet booth after the session.
So I'm just wondering, how is it when you have such a large-scale project and you have all these different users which are not used to digital assessments? How is the integration factor with just the people which aren't used to this?
This is where all the local pilot projects come in. One of the reasons why we think we'll be able to pull it off is the fact that many of the universities have been running pilot projects and have started working on this. It's going to be a challenge, but some of it will actually make it easier for some, at least for the ones grading the material, because dealing with student handwriting is not easy. People who are not used to writing by hand and haven't done so for many, many years, and who are not willing to structure or able to structure text because they lack the text processing tools. So we think there will be some benefits. There will also be, there is some resistance to this, of course. But the student administration people have been very positive and are participating in the project. So we'll see. If we live, we'll see.
It's very interesting. Oh, a question.
Thank you. I was just wondering, integration with other systems and vendors. Do you work with any standards or specifications of standards there, or is it up to the vendors to suggest how to connect FS and other systems together?
That's a hard question to answer correct, because the correct answer would be, of course, we're using standards. For some of this, standards exist, but for some of it, it doesn't. So what we're trying to do is leverage off standards as much as possible, but some of the, we're more concerned with having lightweight, well-documented interfaces than with following standards who doesn't necessarily apply to this. There is some stuff from the learning management side, especially with regard to assessment, stuff like LTI and other stuff from the IMS. But not all of it is directly relevant. So we're trying to do a practical solution that complies with standards to the extent it can, and that's where we stand at it right now. If you have more difficult questions on this, I'll to get Snorre out, because he's the one who's actually doing the work. But it's a trade-off. Anything else I could say about that? Is you sitting there, Knut? He's from one of the vendors we're working with, that's why I'm singling him out. But we're trying to follow standards, and it's let's see which ones we pick in the end. Right now, actually figuring out what information needs to be transferred is the first step. That was a difficult one.
So if you want to ask her more questions, you can ask her after the session. So, thank you.
Thanks.
So our next speaker is Kurt Gammelgaard Nielsen. He is the CEO of University of Southern Denmark. He's been in the educational sector and IT for over a decade. Kurt.
Thank you. Let's just switch to my slide. See if I have any luck. come in a second. Well, let me start off with trying to see some slight differences between the Norwegian approach and the Danish approach to digital assessment. Still not. Doesn't come up. I'll leave that to technicians. Let me elaborate a bit on digital assessment approach from the two national levels. In Denmark as well as in Norway, just heard, the ministry would like to have digital assessment for all the university, probably for all higher education institutions. And I think the difference between Norway and Denmark right now is that in Norway this seems to have a very central approach to this, and in Denmark we have a decentral approach to this. And hopefully during my presentation I will think out some of the benefit but also disadvantages between the different approaches. Just some facts. So we're doing this also in Denmark. I will focus now on one institution, my institution, University of Southern Denmark. So some facts about my institutions. Fairly new university, a mid-sized university, located in 6 cities in the southern part of Denmark. 26,000 students, offering 222 programs. So this a bit about the fact of the university. Our challenge was given to us by the Vice Chancellor in 2010. He said, well, now I'm not going to hear any more fuss about this paper-based exam. We're going to have digital exam, and we're going to have it by the end of 2012. That's our challenge. So by that time, we had 75,000 paper-based exam we have to translate out to digital exam. And there was on that time no mandatory ministerial order that we should have it. It had come, and now the case as in Norway, all the universities should implement this. And right now we are the only one who has implemented full digital exam. So actually Denmark started off a bit earlier than Norway, but we're not actually ahead of the process, and that's interesting, especially seen from a student point of view, because what is interesting must be that if I'm a student attending University of Southern Denmark, I would like to take my bachelor there, but my master somewhere else at the technical university, I would like to have the same assessment forms and the same look and feel, and we're not giving the students that. I think that approach they will gain with the Norwegian central approach, because there, if you attend in Norway, in Oslo or Agder University, it probably will be the same, and the policies, which also was mentioned, will be the same, and there's not the same in Denmark. So that was our challenge. Give us digital exam, and what we was wondering about is what is actually a digital exam, and try to respond to the challenge. And what we have come up with, there must be some criteria we have to meet to have good exams, and there are 4 generally accepted criteria for good assessment and exams. Validity: the assessment should measure the content. So if you're a medicine student, we would like to test you in ethics. We would not like to test engineer students in ethics, not at the first, maybe later on, but we actually test medicine students in the bachelor level on ethics. Reliability: the assessment should be reliable. There should be a consistent distinction between poor students and good students, between poor performance and good performance. Feasibility: this was actually added on later on. So first of all, we were given the challenge, make it happen, and afterwards, oh, that's how much it's gonna cost, make it feasible as well. So we have to make it feasible, and we have to have the resources to the assessment, as was also mentioned early on. Well, this assessment is held in classrooms, in sports halls, and so on. There is a cost to renting all these rooms, so we have a solution to that. And the acceptability, the assessment should be widely accepted among students, among faculty members, and also about in the society. So if we put up some digital assessment which is not accepted by the society, that was not an approach we could use, we found. The status now, 2013, is that we think we have a conscious approach to assessment, and we have an ongoing pedagogical discussion about what is good assessment. I think this is one of the gain we have with implementing digital assessment. We have started off this pedagogical discussion. This was not in the case in the start of the process. It was only technical solutions, technical problems we should solve, and this is where we are now. We're past the problem with the technical problems. Acceptability is high among students. They will like to bring their own device to the in the education, but also to the exams. We have asked the students during surveys, and they feel this is really nice. They like this, and the resources that should be present is present in the exam halls and everywhere else to work. Workflows and work groups, and when the student bring in and there's virus on it, we have student people who help the students with their own stuff. We also we started off with 5 working groups. We have closed all the 5 working groups now. The legal advice group, as also in Norway, there has to be some legal stuff that you have to work with. There are some technical issues. There's a technical group to develop and implement the solutions. There's an investigator group, people who are standing looking into the students' computers if they're cheating. They are not, they don't know actually what to look for. So we have actually had education and coordination of our investigators so they know what to look for. And we have had a working group on digital feedback and anti-plagiarism. A different approach from Norway and Denmark, or University of Southern Denmark, we have developed our own tools. So there was no tools, and we ask our vendors if there were any solution to this, and there was not at that time a solution, so we developed it on our own. There is some links on the end. I don't think I have time to show you how many hand-ins, how many digital assessment we do right now, but I've looked into it. Approximately 80,000 we have done this year so far, so we're probably going to be past the 100,000 by end of this year. We have developed different kind of assessment. I think that is really what it's all about. Having more different kind of assessment. So yes, we have written exam, that's all the digital assessment, but we also have developed oral exam and practical exam and combined exam. And I think this is interesting for us, it's good for us, because there was not that much alignment between teaching and taking the exam afterwards. So probably the teacher was having his lecture, but when the student comes to the exam, there was other competence that the students was actually tested in. I think we have very good and conscious approach to assessment now, and we have to continue this dialogue with the faculty members. Going into the 4 criteria, 2 of them was the validity and reliability. Yes, when you bring your own device and there is an open internet exam, the students, some of them will cheat. What do we do with cheating? So you have to work with this. Anti-plagiarism programs, we also have to have monitoring programs. At the end of this presentation, I will give you a short hands-on demonstration of a program we have developed there. We have had, as I said, special courses for investigators. We started also off with investigators sitting actually here, and you as a student now having your laptop sitting there. So what did they see? They see the back of the laptop. So we changed the room so the investigator sit in the back looking into your screen. Practical things, but you have to learn it. You have to see it before you can do anything about it. We have been taking a spot check of the students, approximately 1,000 spot checks hands-on onto the student computers, see what they're running on their computers. Is it a virtual machine running on it? Do they have Dropbox and etc.? Quite demanding task there. And yes, we found that 175 students was cheating. 175 we have caught, and there is this gray area of all the students we didn't caught. We also have approach to this to make sure that we have less and less students who's cheating. The acceptability, as I mentioned, we have asked the students, we made a survey, and 22% of all our students responded to this, as a 22% of 26,000 students, and they are very fond of and very positive to the help and having digital assessment at all. So you shouldn't worry about bringing digital assessment to the students. They will like to have this. Feasibility. There's a cost to it, and we had tried to estimate what the cost is. I think the cost is fair to say approximately 20 euros per assessment per student. That's what the cost is for digital assessment. And included in this cost is the supporters, people running around helping the students, student employees helping the students outside in workshops, technical solutions, investigators, supervisors. It all costs, and it runs up to approximately 21 euros per, or 20 euros per assessment. We have another approach than in Norway, so we have more decentralized approach, and Aarhus University was one of the first trying out the digital assessment, and they made a very large-scale pre-project, and there is some numbers here you can compare what the cost is at Aarhus and at the University of Southern Denmark. It depends on how you actually do the numbers here, because is all the cost into the digital assessment, is there some base cost that's covered by other faculty or other staff, so you have to be very precise on what the cost is and what you gain from it when you measure feasibility. I thought about giving you a short introduction to the different processes before exam, during exam, and after exam, what's happening and what kind of people is actually involved in this. So this is a quick, I will walk you through what this look like from a teacher point of view, student, censor, and secretary, and at the end of this, if I have time to it, make a presentation of this exam monitor. The workflow is the key to digital assessment. There is the feasibility. So if you have an efficient workflow with digital assessment, you can actually gain from it. If you don't have an efficient system to handle this, you just have digital assessment as an extra cost, and you have extra workflow. So we have been working on this very hard to make sure that every workflow is covered and supported in our digital assessment engine. The first that's going to happen is, well, you have a teacher. The teacher would like to have assessment, so he writes the assessment, writes some metadata. When is the assessment? At which time? What the time label? What kind of extra additional should the students have? Should the student have open internet access? Is it controlled, and so on? This is metadata on it. They add this to the assessment. Before exam, we have a workshop where the students will bring their own device. We will test it for virus and see if it can run on the assessment. They will have to test the S2 assignment. S2 Scribble is a digital pen exam monitor, which I will show you in a short while. So a lot of introduction to the students, information to the students, what is digital assessment. During the exam, the students will download the assessment, write the assessment, upload it, and we have support teams around at all time. After the exam, we have the secretary who helps on all the workflows, the plagiarism control, distributing the assignment to whoever who should give the notes and publish the grades, and the grades are also into the assignment engine. And what you see actually here on your right is the archive, and then I just notice that, well, in Norway there is different kind of policy, and I can just say from our perspective, we are archiving the student's assessment in 6 months. I don't know if that is the right answer, but that's what we found out to be a fair time to archive the assessment. If we don't find anything, any plagiarism after 6 months, our legal advisor said, your time is gone. You should work faster then. So the conclusion, what we have found is that we think we have a more conscious approach to digital assessment. There's more alignment between what's happening in teaching hall and in classes and to the actual assessment. This alignment is very important because we would like to test the students in what they really is going to be tested in, and we would like also to have the students knowing what they're going up for. So digital assessments is actually bringing us more alignment to this. We have different kind of digital assessment, more variety in this, and then in paper-based exam. There's a high acceptability among students, a bit lower amongst faculty members, especially when you get older, fair to say. We have improved possibility for testing. We have a high reliability in digital assessment, and we have efficient enough resources present to having the students bringing their own computer to the classes. And that's why we have developed a little program I will show you now. It's called Exam Monitor, and let's see if I can have this up and running. Let's see. That was not the right one. Let's see if I can. Probably have to log on once again. Trust. I'm not sure what I'm trusting, but I hope that's. This is actually got it here. This is the administrative part of a Exam Monitor. Exam Monitor is a little program that we enforce onto the student's own device when they come into the exam. And it's a little Java program, and it actually monitors all what's going on the student's computer. So every program started, every screenshot, or sorry, what they see on the computer, we take screenshot of it. And I just going to show you a demo test here, what we're actually reporting. We can see live views, and here is what an investigator will see. He started off this program, and it's green, it's okay, it started. And the first, actually, we pointed out, we can see in the clipboard at the computer, there was content. And if this is an exam without any help, he had violated one of the rules. This is the first. And we see actually this as a new feature that the student said, or the teacher said, well, this will be an exam without any help. And what did the students do? They put and copy-pasted rows of information into the clipboard because we couldn't see it. The clipboard is not open. So we made the exam monitor able to look into this application on the computer, whether it is a Mac PC or a Linux, so we can see there is a content in the clipboard. Next one is that identify every system, every process running on the computer. So here we got all this stuff. Oh, this is a virtual machine you're running. This is not allowed. This is the next thing we're going to look at. And here we have the first screenshot. This is what the student is looking at, and he's having something running on here. And what is really interesting for us is we can give this information to the students, and when we say there has been plagiarism, we have the same information, and we can bring the same information to the table, share it with the students, say, well, this was not you, this was the exam without any help, and you have something Java running on, you have a virtual machine that was not allowed on this exam. So it's perfectly clear for every part of a complaint that this is not legal. This has been very hard for us, and we have struggled a lot of it because the students have said, I haven't done anything. There was something running on the machine, I don't know, I haven't done anything. Now we can, with screenshots, see you have pushed this button, you have done it at this time, and we have informed you that exam monitor is actually running. So this little label exam monitor in the bottom of the screen is running as long as the exam is running. Have we succeeded with this program? Well, this was one of the features we have developed rather late, and the students have actually complained about this because NSA and whatever. So we are challenging the students now in we're not accepting just looking over and then investigators looking into you, but we are also monitoring you. So the process was that we should have run exam monitor for all our exam here in June, and we actually have to stop the process, ask the ministry, can we do this, ask our legal advisor, have legal advice consultants coming in, looking at the program, and now it's legal cleared, we can do this. So the first exam will run here in October, and every exam in January with exam monitor. So this is just to give you a hands-on what program we see as necessary when you have digital exam, because the students will challenge you in, well, if I can bring my own computer, what can you actually see, what can you monitor, especially if it's with a closed mode exam. Can I bring some papers, can I bring some information, and I know what's best for my case, and I know where I can put it in my computer, and you probably are not able to see it. Now we're able to see it, but they probably would like to challenge this as well. But just to give you a quick look to what tool we see as necessary. I think that's 2 minutes. Good. I'm finished.
So we have more than enough time for questions. Are there any questions? Oh, question 2.
So, why is bring your own device important for our exam room?
I think the main thing for us has been the acceptability for the students. They would like to have their own computer because they have this in their class. They have, like me right now, I'm looking at the Mac. I'm used to use PC, so it's not. I don't feel comfortable, and the student feel comfortable with their own device. That's what we started off with. So we would like to have the student having alignment between the class and the exam. That's why we bring their own device.
Right. I mean, because it seems like you're taking on a fair amount of complexity for this one thing. And the way I was thinking about if I were to do this, I'd have a big tray of iPads in the entrance of the exam room, and I would just have the students pick up each an iPad and then go do their exam, because it's all web-based presumably anyway. So
some of them, but the assessment we have developed is more combined now, so they can have an assessment with multiple choice, then have to write something on top of a X-ray something, and then you have to write something additional. So it's combined different kind of skills. So it's not only internet exam anymore. What we are also being more precise on, when the students bring their own device, we don't have to buy any machines. We have to buy let-out machine that goes broken during the exam. So we have bought approximately 100 machines for 26,000 students. So that's not that much. And we don't have the problem is in always updating it with the latest software. So that makes digital assessment also feasible for us.
Okay, thank you.
So who are the people at the exams going through the people's computers? Because at my exams it was only senior citizens and they had no clues about this. And what about the legal ramifications of people having access to everything on a computer?
Yeah, there's senior people who is investigators, but a lot of them, or some of them, have not passed the exam for being an investigator. So we have the oldest investigators, actually not more investigators. They were not able to see on the screen what's actually happened. This was important for us that the investigators actually did something actively and positively in the exam. And who has access to, for instance, exam monitor? We have been very precise on tightening. So there's only 5 people at the university who have access to the monitor thing. Not the teacher can't see what the student is writing. We think that will be a mix of function. So there's investigators, especially developed people who have a legal and will represent the university in a legal case with their students. They have access to the system and no one else. And so they have reports. But I think it's a very important issue, and we didn't communicate that clearly enough to our students. That's why they complained, and that's why we stopped in June. Yeah.
Just a question. What kind of exams can you handle with this kind of setup? I understand like writing text in Word is easy, but do you do like a multiple choice, adaptive multiple choice, drawings?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We have, there was a clear understanding from the Vice Chancellor, every assessment should go from paper to digital. So we have brought so we have developed digital pen solution. We have developed special multiple choice exams. We have developed a lot of tools to make that happen actually. So if there is a mathematician, he will like to use there's some different writing system. And our health department said, well, we would like to bring X-ray into it. And they have to drill down to the X-ray to see this spot, this gray area, something. So we have to drill down. Can we do this? Yes, we can do this. Engineering said we also have some 3D things. Can we do that? This is also possible. So the essay exam is the easy part of it.
Impressive. Did you manage to find any commercial solution to this, or did you have to develop everything?
We built it on our own. I think the market is more mature now, and there is a market for it, so there will probably be good vendors out there. But we started off building on our own, and we did it in 2 years. So that have probably been the advantage from my point of view. If there has been a tender in Denmark, so also new university will probably have digital assessment in 1 to 2 years. We already had it last year. So we are quicker to adapt digital assessment than others. That have been the benefit from developing it on, but there has been a cost to it as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and then time's up. So, let's thank Kurt. One second. I would like that. So the next speaker is myself. My name is Frey Alfredson, and I'm from Reykjavik University in Iceland. And I'd like to ask you to hang on just a second while I put on the headset. Thank you. It's muted. It's muted. Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, good. So my lectures is about bring your own device exam system that we made at Reykjavik University in Iceland. It's a pilot project, and what's interesting to see here is that after seeing what Kurt and Ingrid have, you can see that we're stepping our first steps in going in digital exam way. So this is a pilot project which we decided to make for a programming course because we wanted to choose something simple, something that we had enough people to make, like this one here. Having a programming course means that we have a lot of students and other people with the required knowledge to make the system. We've tested this on 800 students. We started 1 year ago making the system. And the largest exam we have had 450 students. And we've done over 2,000 assessments with the system. Now this is a USB-based system based on Fedora Linux. So it's a bootable system. I forgot to take this with me. Sorry, 1 second. So it's a USB bootable system where we just put a USB key into the machine and we boot it up using this USB key. It runs completely in memory, so it's a persistent system, so that when we turn off the machine, there's nothing left on the USB key, which means that we never store anything on the USB key itself. And it runs fine on Mac and Linux, but we'll see that, of course, with such a system, there are some hardware problems that we have to overcome. It's a completely locked down system. So the idea was to have lock it down so they don't have any access to their local hard drives, no access to other networks, nor an external DNS server, no access to USB or anything that makes them allow them to get data into their machine or out of the machine. So it's a lockdown system. Now, when let's look at the user experience of the user. We get them to boot the system up. So we have a special gathering where the students come and they try out the USB key to see does it really work on their machine. Now, if it doesn't work, then we do have spare machines which they can use. So this is around 5 to 10% of the machines that have problems, but we're always working on hardware fixes to make it better on more machines. Now, when the user logs in, he gets this interface here. He has to log in with his username and password because our older methods of having digital exams was to let them work on our machines with access to the no access to the internet, but we couldn't control what they were doing. If they had their own USB key or anything, we had the problem of them able to cheat. But another problem we had was that they tend to forget to put their name on the exam. So sometimes we had no ID on the exam after the digital exam. So in this system, they have to log in using Active Directory. They have to log in using their own username and password to authenticate, so we know that this is the person that's taking the exam. After they have logged in, they get this interface here. It's just a desktop. I have my machine here running with the system right now. So they just get a full desktop with all the required software they need for the exam. At the moment, it's just a few options. It's a system called Mooshak, which is not the best system in the world. It's something we just know in our university. It's used to give them the exam questions and to examine if it's the correct solution and so forth. I'll come to that in just a second. And because this is a programming course that we were running this pilot on, we have code blocks, which is an IDE to program with. And we tell all our students to use code blocks on their normal machines so they get used to it before they go into the exam. Now, I mentioned Mooshak. Mooshak is a service that can also not just show you the assignments, but also shows you how you're doing. So this is something that the teacher has to decide. Does he want the student to get some feedback? Was it a correct solution? Is something wrong? Is there a memory problem? This system runs with multiple things like a memory debugger and all sorts of things to help them understand if there's something wrong. Now, usually in exams, we tend to turn off a few of these features because if the student sees that he's doing something wrong, he ends up spending all his time maybe on one assignment. So the only feedback we want them to see is, did it really compile? Because if it doesn't compile, it's harder for us to run our tests on the program to see, is it really working like it's supposed to do? Now, when they're done in the exam, they have to remember to click this button right here. This is the submit button. It submits the exam to the server. So when they're done in the exam, we get all the data through this submit button. And we usually get a person to verify also, just to make sure. So as soon as they've pressed the submit button, they have to ask one of the teachers or the person in the room to come to them and just check that he actually has submitted the exam, and also write down the output from it, because it shows exactly which assignments did he do, just to make sure that both the student and the teacher agree that he did in fact finish these specific problems. It simplifies a lot of things afterwards when students come back, if something comes up. Okay, let's look at how this system works in from a technical perspective, from the background. So we have a server and a Wi-Fi network which the USB key automatically logs into. So we have a special Wi-Fi network which we call RU-Exam, which we enable just when the exams are running. And the laptop just automatically logs into it, and then they can communicate only with the server. And we have two fail-safes to make sure that they only are able to communicate with the server. One is that this particular network only has routes to that particular server, and it doesn't allow any communication between clients, just to make sure that they have no way of communicating with each other using this Wi-Fi network. The next fail-safe is that the system itself has a local firewall which doesn't allow it to talk to anything except that server. This makes it possible for us to use the computers in the computer rooms. So we can boot it up, and it will communicate only with the exam server. And like I mentioned, the first thing people think is, wait, if you're using Wi-Fi, there are a lot of driver issues. In worst case, if we have a driver issue, we just have these USB dongles and just put them into the machine. And that way, we are always sure that we have a driver for the Wi-Fi. So it's a simple solution for the driver problem of Wi-Fi. Now, the user has to log in using the login code that we saw before, the login screen with his own username and password. This way we log which machine it is, what IP address and so forth, just to make sure that we have all the data of that this is the particular person taking this exam. This also means that if the same person is doing it on two machines, we know exactly that it's something shaky about this. So we try to log what we can. Now, the server has direct access to the machines. So at the moment, this does not work outside of the university. You have to be inside the university for this to work. So what it does is that it uses the SSH protocol to deploy the exam onto the USB key. So if they are successfully able to log in, they get the required documents that they need, and they get some specific scripts and programs that are added to the USB key if needed. Now, the neat thing about this is that because the server is logging into the laptop, it can log into the regions that the user doesn't have any access to, which means that we can set up services which the user can't change, at least not the way we boot it up. Okay? And as soon as the person gets, or the student gets an exam, we lock it down. We don't allow them to use the exam right away. This is done to make sure that everybody has logged in and everybody has their machines up and running when we allow them to take the exam. So at the exact moment when the exam is open, everybody is able to use the exam at the same time. After this, we take 5 minutes, every 5 minutes we take a backup copy of the home directory and all the submissions to Mushak that the user has done. This is just to make sure that we have a copy of everything if something happens. The person forgot his charger or something just happened in the middle of the exam. And this makes sure that we can go back. If something happens, he can go to a new machine, or he can boot up his old machine, and we manually put it over to his machine. So it doesn't happen automatically, because if something comes up, we want to know about it. So this is our way to make sure that we have some data. When the user has finished the exam, he just submits his final copy. It does the same thing. It's as the backup. It just takes a copy of all the data, the user's home directory and everything, just to make sure that the user doesn't say afterwards, wait, I had it on my desktop or somewhere else. That's something we sometimes have, that the student says, I really did save it. But we have a 5-minute delta throughout the whole exam, so we know exactly if the file was there or not. So it's a nice system there. Okay, so that's the whole process of this digital exam system. Now, the obstacles we've had with the system is the UFE or BIOS, these two chips that are on all modern computers to boot them up. BIOS is the old chip that is used to boot up either from hard drive or from USB stick, and the UFE is the new replacement, which is much more advanced, but because it's so new, there tends to be a few bugs in the early machines. The problem with BIOS is that there are multiple vendors. Even though you choose something like an HP machine or a Dell, it still has multiple different versions of BIOSes, which means that there are multiple ways to boot up the machine. It means that there are multiple different ways to press the buttons when the machine goes up. So we have to figure out on every single vendor, is it F2 when you boot up the machine, or is it delete, escape, and so forth. So it takes time, and that's why we want our students to learn how to use their machine way before the exam. Another problem is the new secure boot in the UFE system. Secure boot is a nice idea where you cryptographically sign the boot process to try to prevent viruses from booting up and so forth. There are a few problems with this. This is not as secure as it's supposed to be. And another thing is that Microsoft is the oversees this. So you have to send your bootloaders to Microsoft for $100, and they have to cryptographically sign it. So usually we have to turn this off on machines, at least just while this exam is going, or the course. The student have a choice there. Another problem is Windows 8. Now, Windows 8 has this new feature called fast shutdown, which isn't really shutdown. What it does is that it's a hybrid shutdown, meaning that it's hibernating and doing some shutdown, which means that it's very fast to boot because it's not really starting up from scratch. And another thing that it does is that it tells the UEFI that it's doing so, which means that when people go into shutdown and start the machine again, none of the buttons like F2 and so forth to get to the menus work. So this was something that a lot of people had a problem with because they didn't notice that the machine wasn't really shut down. Another problem was Wi-Fi. It's not always stable. And especially not when the teachers overload a room with too many students and you have too many sessions on the Wi-Fi points. So that's one of the problems we had, and we've always had to distribute the students evenly throughout the university, just to make sure that everybody has Wi-Fi. And another thing we do is we tell everybody to put their phones on flight mode, just to make sure. It really works to tell them to do flight mode instead of just shutting it off, because then they just put it on silent, and it doesn't do anything for us. Another thing is hardware. Now, Linux comes with a lot of drivers, so it really works on most of the machines out of the box, at least for the minimum requirements that we want. But there are occasionally problems with especially backlighting. So this is something we can change. We can add features to the boot menu to turn off a few power management features so that the backlight is completely on. So we're always finding like small things that we can add, more drivers or more support. But for the people that are having problems, which are usually around 5 to 15%, we just tell them to either come with a different laptop or we put them in our computer rooms. The problem, of course, is that we don't have that many computers, but we should be able to handle 5 to 15%. So it's a nice system that way. Of course, like everything, these don't always work 100%. That is, the quality of the material, it's always somewhere. So because every single USB stick is the same, and we don't care about the content of the USB stick, then if something comes up, it's usually just simple enough to put a new USB stick or change the dongle. So in that sense, we haven't had any problems until we haven't had any problems with wear, but it's going to happen eventually. Now logistics. That's very similar to what Kurt was talking about. Like I mentioned, we have to get the people to try out the exam, because the worst thing that happens and does happen at our university is that a person comes to the exam, has never tried the system before, sits down and wants to boot up the system. And the first thing we notice is, okay, you have 5 minutes to boot it up, and you have no idea which buttons to press to actually boot up the system. So that's one of the problems that we have. And they don't know if they have to have a Wi-Fi dongle or not, so some of them just take one extra just to make sure, but they have no idea what's going to happen. So what we usually do then is we try to push them to come and try out the system. And we try to take down then what type of model of machine do they have and so forth. Another thing we do is that you usually have 2 exams in every single course that uses the system. That's to make sure that they have used the system before and are comfortable with it. Because when you use a system like this for the first time, it's always going to feel a little bit alien to you in the beginning. It's just normal. But by doing 2 smaller exams, we also get the stress test that we want, and we're able to see if this system really is going to handle everything like it's supposed to. Now the staff. We, of course, let them hand out the exams, and that means hand out the USB key. We make sure that these staff know exactly which USB keys are where, because we want to have them all back. Of course, there's always the problem of losing USB keys, but our idea later on is to make sure that there's nothing on this USB key that matters. everything that you get comes from the server, and it's supposed to be a little bit harder than to get past the fail-safes. Now, we also want the staff to sign off the USB keys and sign off the correct answers. That is, we want to know exactly which submission they did, and thank you, which submission they did, and also did they return the USB key. So we want the staff member to take the USB key and sign that he actually got it back, so we know which person lost the key in the end. So we want them to track just the USB keys and the Wi-Fi dongles. And also, like Kurt said, we want our staff to be in the back of the room, because we want the students which want to cheat, we want them to be stressed and always be looking at behind the shoulders just to see, is the guy behind me now, or and so forth. Because if the person is in the front, they don't see anything. They don't know what's going on the screen. They don't know if they turn off the machine or anything like that. But if they do, we of course see some anomaly that one machine dropped out of the network, and we might check it out. Okay, so this pilot project has been a success. We have had some teachers saying that they never want to have a paper-based exam in programming ever again. And we want to take this further. We want to develop a better solution. And we're going to rewrite the systems using all the new ideas that we had through this pilot. And we want to publish this as an open source solution for everybody that's interested, because we don't really see any real profit in keeping this just to ourselves. We're too small. Okay, so the future ideas that we have is to change a little bit. We want to use Git repositories for backup. This is a version control system which keeps track of changes. By doing this, it will simplify things like the backup of from the server. But another feature that we get from this is to that we can miss backup cycles. So if something happens, then the USB can keep doing 5-minute backups and sync all the backups to us. So if something happens and we lose, let's say, internet connectivity for a few minutes, we would still get all the backups, like every single 5-minute backup when we get the backup from the user. Of course, this was also make smaller deltas to the server, so that's also a good thing. And another idea which we have been thinking about is making an extra partition onto the USB key. A small partition which we would encrypt with a key from the server, so it's only valid for this user in this exam. And by keeping a copy of the Git repository on this encrypted partition, then if something goes wrong, we still have the copy on the USB key, and we can only unlock it using the server. This would mean that one person would not be able to take out the USB key and give it to a friend to get the data that's on the USB key. So this is one thing that we would like to try. We would also like to have an exam key distributed for every exam. This is just one number that we give to every single one of our students. This would be a unique identifier to tell the students that this is the exam. This would mean that the server knows that this is this exam, and if somebody had a rogue key, he would still need this key to get the encryption keys from the server to be able to use the system. Also, another thing we would like to do is to number every single USB key. We wanted to do this for these particular USB sticks, but the serial numbers are all zeroed out by the vendor because he probably didn't care about the serial numbers. So getting good USB keys with serial numbers would be excellent. We would also like to mark them on inside and outside. There are two good things about this. We of course can keep track of our USB keys, and it's less likely that a staff member takes one up because he says, hey, you have enough of them, I'm going to keep this one. So instead we make them look like a part of a system that makes sure that they don't want to take number 32 out of the system, and so forth. Okay, And of course, a very simple add-on, getting hardware profiles straight for the system so we know exactly what hardware people are using, which would simplify hardware support. So, are there any questions? One thing I wanted to add here, I forgot it here. I really like questions, so I brought Icelandic candy, which I'm going to give out to everybody that has a question for me. Okay, so any questions? Sorry. Can you hand him the?
If the Icelandic candy is Hákarl, I will ask you a question.
Okay, it's not Hákarl.
Then I won't ask you.
Okay, so you really want to? I don't have any alcohol with me anyway.
Sorry,
So.
you don't get a question.
Okay.
Have you, sorry, Lars, have you tried any hackathons, so giving out the software to people and encouraging your students to actually hack it? And that is also a question to the other two.
When it comes to computer security, we do have, here. So when it comes to computer security, we actually teach it in our university. So we do look at it from many different aspects. And we do know, of course, of some minor problems that we have to fix. But we actually do have like hacking competitions in our university. And of course, we would like to have more people look at the code to find different methods to break in. Okay. Another question? Can you hand him the... I can throw this to you right now. Oh, okay.
Thank you. What about the process after you have gathered the...
Yes, the process after we get the exams. Now, because this is pilot, then it's a little bit raw, but at the same time, it's still in Mushak, which means that we can rerun everything through Mushak just to see are the people getting the correct results. So it really simplifies going through all the process of seeing what's correct and what's not, and then just going through it digitally. It really simplifies the process. We really like being able to do it just digitally. But we use many different methods. It really depends on the teacher what method he wants.
It's just for computer programming?
At the moment, it's just for computer programming. But what this pilot has shown us is that we should be able to make this general enough to be able to add other software and be able to use it for other courses. Now, the only problem I see there is that the computer science department is very open for this idea. That is, the students, that is. They like computers. They find this interesting, and they find it simple to boot up the machine using something like a USB stick, an operating system on a USB stick. But when you take the lawyers and all these other different departments, they get scared if this process goes too slowly. So when we have TAs which are helping setting up these machines, if it takes too long, the other people get very stressed. So, did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions? No? Well, okay. Thank you very much. Let's see. Try. My time is up. Okay. Yeah, 5:30. Now, because I was going to hand a message, which was also handed in the last session, but let's see. I don't remember exactly. It's about, of course, the. Sorry, yeah, the gala dinner is at what was it, 7:30 or, yeah, 7:30, and there are buses going from here, and from the. Clarion Hotel. And this is for the people that registered for it yesterday. Okay. Yeah, and you have to bring your identity. Okay, thank you very much.